this morning, which I've got to tell you, we've had a really interesting response on. This is the story. A woman says she felt discriminated against because she wasn't allowed to take her mobility scooter on a bus in West Norfolk. Nicola Davis was on holiday in Sandringham. She became disabled 2 years ago and uses a scooter to get around. She was told she would need an assessment and permit before she could use the bus. Now, we didn't know this, but it turns out that is a rule that many bus firms have. Not everybody knows about that. We've already been speaking this morning to Ben Reid from the Norfolk-based disability rights group Equal Lives.
I've learned a lot about disability scooters and buses as well, looking into this story. And it just seems the hoops that she would have had to have jumped through, she couldn't do as someone coming on holiday in Norfolk. We know that a lot of disabled people come on holiday in Norfolk because we run a service that supports a lot of those people, and it's just discrimination.
Just discrimination. Now, when we started talking about this story, I expected that lots of people would have sympathy for poor Nicola, who was left at the bus stop and told she couldn't get on because she didn't have a permit, and given that not many of us knew you needed a permit. But, Tim, the response has been interesting, hasn't it? Give us a little flavour of what we've had so far.
Yeah, it's been very interesting indeed. Andy says, I have every sympathy for bus companies to enforce the code of conduct regarding mobility scooters. I and other members of my family have been injured by poor use of these scooters, and many people who have them appear to have no idea on how to use them safely. Thanks for that, Andy. Keith says, totally disagree with mobility scooters on buses. They are a powered transport. If you need it, then get a wheelchair. And Robert in Hunstanton says, I was at the bus stop the other day. This issue with the scooter happened. The driver got off the bus and politely explained to her, but because of the business of the bus and the safety of other passengers, she couldn't get on. I think she's been very unfair. Was the lady insured? If she had got on the bus with the scooter and injured someone, do they claim against the lady on the scooter or the bus company?
Well, there's more to this, more questions coming up now. Let's talk to Keith McNally, who's from the Confederation of Public Transport, which represents bus operators. Keith, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Chris.
I think we've all gone on a bit of a journey this morning because what's come out from this, and even a local disability rights group called Equal Lives, they didn't know that people with mobility scooters need an assessment and need a permit to get on a bus. Just talk me through why that is and why you feel that perhaps it's not better known.
Well, I'm sorry to hear of anyone who has a problem using their mobility scooter, but going back to when mobility scooters first came into common use, bus operators experienced various issues with users. Sometimes the scooters were too big, or, as was mentioned there by one of your callers, sometimes people struggled to use them properly. Sometimes they can be too heavy and cause damage to buses. So we brought our members together and developed a scheme that was intended to be a national scheme that would enable people to demonstrate that they can use the scooter competently on the bus. They can get some training if they need it from the operator. They can then get a permit that shows that they're competent in the use of getting that scooter on and off the bus and that it's suitable for being brought onto a bus. And then they can use that permit to travel on all the buses of the participating members of the scheme. So that's the majority of buses in the UK.
I'm glad you cleared that up, Keith, because there was a suggestion earlier on that you needed a different permit or to be assessed by each different bus company, but that's not the case then.
No, part of the benefit of our scheme is that if you live in one area and get your permit from your local operator, which is the normal practice, you can then take your scooter and your permit and travel in another area on buses of another participating member of the scheme. And as I said, most operators are in the scheme.
So how often are these permits handed out? Is this a busy system? Do lots of mobility scooter users know about this and actually go for these assessments then?
I think use is maybe relatively limited. You do see scooters on buses. They're not usually common, I suppose, but there's lots of people who use them successfully, and that's what we tried to encourage really with the scheme. So the way that somebody who has a scooter who wants to use buses would take that forward, they'd contact their local operator, make arrangements, and normally either go to the operator's premises or come to some other arrangement where the operator can give them a bit of training, talk them through it, and make that assessment.
Would you agree that maybe this is a scheme that needs to be publicised a bit more? Because a lot of people we've spoken to this morning didn't know about it. And if you think people using mobility scooters, but by definition, would tend to have issues getting around. So you don't want to end up with people like Nicola, who we've heard from, being left at bus stops, do we? That's not what anybody wants.
No, absolutely. I guess it's one of those things where with relatively limited use, it's difficult to know how and where to promote it. We have various materials on the bususers.org website. So that's an organisation that represents bus users, and they kindly host the materials that we put together that explain about the scheme. And I know a lot of mobility scooter sales outlets know about the scheme and explain it to people. But yeah, it's one of those things where we're glad for the opportunity to come on and explain how it works so more people know about it. But it's not something that is big enough, I suppose, to justify a big advertising scheme or anything like that.
Keith, thanks for joining us. Keith McNally from the Confederation of Public Transport. If you are a mobility scooter user and you want to know more about this, contact your local bus company, whichever one's nearest to you and is the easiest to get in touch with, I think, is the answer, and make sure that they're a participant in this, and they will be able to assess you. But the news there from Keith is that you then don't need to then do it again if you're going on holiday somewhere else in the country. Your thoughts? I've got to say, so far, there is a fair deal of sympathy for the bus companies coming in. We'll speak to Nicola later on, who sparked this story for us, who wasn't allowed to take a mobility scooter on a bus in West Norfolk. But so far, there's a lot of people getting in touch saying, yeah, actually, there does need to be some sort of scheme whereby people who on mobility scooters are assessed before they get on a bus, which has been an interesting response. Your thoughts? 0800 389 7321. You can WhatsApp us on 08000 321 333. Start your message with the word Norfolk Birthday Club next.